get your earballs ready. Welcome to the Greg and Tim Show podcast. Take time to sit back and relax and enjoy the show. Here are your hosts, Greg and Tim.
Hey, welcome back to episode 3.
Episode 1 and 2 just flew by.
Can you believe that we are doing 3 episodes of best? We've got that many best segments that we're doing 3 episodes. Episodes.
I can see somebody saying, why are they doing the best of? There hasn't been one good one yet. And we appreciate you too.
So it's not that we've had the greatest episodes.
Right.
These are the greatest segments of the episode.
Yeah.
So these best of episodes should be the all-round best episodes
we
ever.
did say favorite.
Yeah, these are some of our favorite
Whether you
things.
think they're good doesn't matter.
Well,
they're our favorites.
If you go back to the first best of, the Mandela effect was not your favorite, but it was some of my favorite things.
Because we're different people, different human beings.
Different people.
So different likes.
Different beards. One's
Different
good.
beards.
One's Tim's.
By the way, out there in Greg and Timland, if you have an opinion about our beards, then please share. Like if you want to say, actually, we haven't done a poll. You haven't done a poll in a while.
Do a poll. We'll after we record these episodes, we will take pictures of ourselves and we will put up our faces and we'll ask which one's better.
Right.
Does that sound good?
I agree.
And then whoever loses has to shave.
No, I'm not shaving.
No?
I'm actually committed to this beard.
Okay.
I have no plans to shave. My wife likes it.
Okay.
I like it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't. If I had to shave, I would be okay with it. But
So don't forget to like, subscribe, share, comment. I say that at the end of every episode, but I feel like some people don't hear that. So
Just
like,
periodically.
subscribe, share, comment, all
every
those kinds
5
of things.
minutes, we should
I
say
want to
like,
dive right
subscribe,
into
and
it.
share.
So let's get into some of your other favorite segments of the shows.
So every episode, when our guest, the day of that our guest is coming, you say the same question. What is that question?
What would you like to drink?
What would you like to drink?
Yeah.
And typically it's like water. We offer water, coffee, and bubbly.
Yeah.
And I think Diet Coke. We have Diet Pepsi too, right?
Yeah.
And most of the time our guests are like either I'm good or just water. Sometimes it's coffee. But 2 episodes in a row, 2 recordings or interviews in a row, we had requests that were completely different.
Yep.
And the first one was Avery Martin.
Yep.
Who said, hey, can I get a RedBull? And I thought, why are we just giving her a RedBull?
Why don't we make her work for it?
Roll the clip.
Before we get into any serious questions, Greg has a lot of other questions coming up that are, kind of interesting, kind of not. So whatever you thought of, all the questions you've been asked, you're wondering what's the first question we're going to ask.
Of course.
But the Greg and Tim show likes to do the unexpected.
Expect the unexpected.
Expect the unexpected.
You know that?
What's that?
You know that's the saying of Big Brother?
No.
Expect the unexpected, and
know.
someone's always watching.
So you are a veteran now of a reality show.
Yes.
We know that you love doing just crazy things, interesting things, challenges, you might say.
Of course.
So I have brought a challenge to you. Early in the day, we asked you whether you wanted some water, you wanted some coffee, and you're the first guest that requested something that no other guest has requested, and that is a RedBull.
Yes.
Okay, so I thought instead of just providing you with a RedBull to slowly sip as you're answering all these questions, I offer you a challenge.
Okay.
And I offer Greg a challenge.
Okay.
I have brought each of us one RedBull, not the smaller version, but the larger version. And I have a competition, if you choose to accept it, to chug and see who finishes first, second, and third.
Okay. Oh my God.
Are you willing to partake in this challenge?
100%. Not even a question. Red Bull's the best.
He told me this idea, and I was like, "Yeah, that's not a problem," because Red Bull comes in small cans. And then he
said, "Let's up the challenge a little bit and make it king
I went to the grocery store. There was a smaller version for $3.69 or the larger version for $4.69.
Well, you got to go with the deal.
And I wanted to go big. Yes,
you have to go. If you got to go big, go home. Get the deal.
And just for the audience sake, I have never had a Red Bull in my entire life.
That's the one thing I'm shocked about. The fact that you haven't had a Red Bull.
Yeah.
He's like Jim. Remember Jim? Have you ever seen Yes Man?
No. I don't think so.
The movie Yes Man. So Jim Carrey on the movie Yes Man has to say yes to everything.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
his girlfriend takes him out, or he goes out with friends, and all they drink is Red Bull, and he just discovers Red Bull. This is going to be Tim.
Yeah.
Once we chug this,
you're going to be
Okay,
hooked.
so we need to know when 0 is to start, and we need a moderate to see that it is finished to determine who is the winner.
This is gonna is this gonna send us into like cardiac arrest?
I literally said,
this
Tim,
like
one of us died.
So and by the way, you did sign the forms we emailed out for the waivers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've all signed the forms.
So we'll just take that as a
Yeah,
contract.
of course it is. Yeah.
So can we get a timer now? Can we get can we get the producer to give us a timer from 10 to 0?
Why we have to do this in 10 seconds?
No, I'm saying for starting time, so we all start at the same time.
Oh.
Okay.
Ready?
We can.
Oh my god, this is
No,
No.
he wants a
I want to count down. So
from
we start at
10
the same time.
seconds.
And you can't open it up until
I
we
can't.
start.
Okay. I
Yeah.
feel like when it comes to comps, I'm good at comps, but when it comes to chugging drinks, that's like my one weakness. This
Oh,
is-
I got
this is where I
your
fall.
kryptonite.
This
I
is
got
my
your
fault. This
kryptonite.
is my kryptonite for sure.
Okay.
I'll just do a countdown.
Okay. And you can't open it till we
Yep,
get to 0.
Right till we start.
Okay.
This is day 2.
2, 1.
Holy shit. Holy shit.
Oh my gosh, somebody's making sick.
Oh my god, I'm coming third. I'm coming third. I can't chug, guys. Oh my god.
I think I'm 2/3 of the way down.
I'm not even half.
Oh my goodness. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do the whole episode now. Are you still going?
Dude. Tim's gonna be buzzing. Oh
Okay, he wins. you drank that whole thing.
dude, I'm gonna be buzzing. Oh my god.
You just keep it off to the side. You don't
Hold
have to
on.
finish it right now.
Then you have to finish.
No, not right now.
I'll finish before I
She'll
go.
finish
Yeah, I wanna
before
see-
she
I want
goes.
to see how far you got. Oh,
No, okay.
way.
Chugging? Oh my god, excuse me. This is like the worst.
I know.
want to do a podcast, chug a drink, and try not to burp into the microphone. That's a challenge for you.
Okay.
Chugging's my
your
weakness.
Mine.
How far did you get?
Mine is.
I thought you were gonna take that home. That was like
I
Greg,
started
thought you
really
had that.
strong. I started really
I
strong.
looked over at Tim. He's like,
All right, back to the show, guys. Let's go. And so we chugged that thing.
You chugged it.
I won. I'm still waiting for the. I think we put $100 on it or something.
I think we said
both
you
of
would get
have
a-
to give me $100 or something like that. So I'm still waiting for that e-transfer. Avery Martin, if you're out there,
If you're out
my
there.
email is sandmanpaintingmb@gmail.com.
You're gonna get so many emails now
for that e-transfer. And I won. You said that maybe you didn't try as hard as you were going to. I think you said
I threw the competition
through the competition
because I did not want to be sick during the interview.
I had never had a Red Bull, and I slammed that thing, and I was just fine.
You were wired.
I've done some eating competitions. I know my stomach can handle it,
Yeah.
and it did.
And then the second time,
And since we're not off the topic of energy drinks. Since
No.
then, we've on the way to Chicago. We had a couple more of those.
you did, yes.
It wasn't Red Bull. It was what was it?
Rockstar.
Rock stars, and I know
Yeah.
we're not supposed to do product placement. Apologies.
No, that's fine.
And I've enjoyed them.
Yes, I could tell. I think you might have had one on the way here.
No. In the mornings,
And then the second time in a row, we asked the guest, "What would you like to drink?"
and that was who was the guest,
Doug Brown.
and what did he request?
Beer.
Beer.
Beer, beer, beer,
The
beer, 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 beer,
breakfast
beer,
of
beer, 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 beer. Yeah.
And what,
At 9 a.m. on a Saturday morning, Doug Brown comes over here and crushes
three
King
in
cans.
an hour and 53 minutes.
Not 9 a.m.
And and when we asked him what his love language is, he said acts of beer.
Acts of beer. Run the clip.
Oh, I start with my Lakeside, please. That's my absolute favorite. This one right here, Lakeside Kolsch. Yeah. Wow. Oh, I'm so happy I'm here.
will still be in the fridge in case you want to change it up.
Delicious. I was like, there's no way they're gonna get the right one because I just did Lake of the Woods Brewing, and you guys, this is my all-time favorite beer right here. Best summer beer I've ever had. Right here in my hands. Yeah.
That was actually the last one I picked. I'm like, I don't
Really?
know which
Really?
one to pick.
Yeah. I actually have a commercial coming up with Trans Canada Brewery.
That's the bomber one.
TCB or whatever.
Yeah.
So they have the Ryder 12 pack that has 13 beers in it or whatever. So they've got
We're getting right out the
they've
gate.
recruited a bunch of us, like me and Walby and Irving's going to be in it and Derek Taylor. Apparently, they launched it last year, and a number of people in Saskatchewan got really upset about it or whatever. So now they're trying to make it bigger and better. You get it's the Saskatchewan dozen, right? You get 13 instead of 12. It's like a baker's dozen, right?
Great guy. He's such a good guy. I really enjoyed it. But that was great.
That was fun.
Also, he gave us some great answers. I love the interview.
So in the Doug Brown interview, my favorite part, going back to it, was the Mike Kelly story.
Yeah.
Because apparently that was the first time he's ever told that story.
Yeah.
And we got it as an exclusive on the Greg and Tim show.
Yeah.
I would like to hear the story about a place called Elite Fitness.
Oh, Jesus.
And a person named Mike Kelly.
Wow. I have never... That's so funny.
He also needs his beer topped up, if we can do that before he answers the question.
Would you like your other beer?
Well, I'm going to need another one for sure. But what do you want to know about that?
I don't know the story, but I've been told it's a really good one.
We were told to ask that one of two questions, and that's number one.
That's funny because I've never discussed that before. Yeah, you could say this was so Mike and I didn't always see eye to eye. We could do a whole show on why we didn't get along or whatever, but
Yes,
at the end of his tenure, that's where I worked out. And I was not very happy with him. Our interaction, our relationship wasn't great. And then he showed up at the gym. Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I'll need both these. No, he came into my gym shortly after the termination, and we had a lot of words for each other. So it was
in the gym.
It was very mutual. Yes, in the gym, in front of a
lot of people.
A lot of people. Yeah, it got. I don't think I've ever been that angry or animated or heated in my life. But yeah, and he was at the same register, I would say. So it was interesting. Yeah.
Two like red-blooded football loving guys that meet up in a gym that don't see eye to eye. It's bound to happen. I'm sure it happens in locker rooms that I don't even hear the stories about.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you there are so many fights like in the 11 years, well, not even in just the CFL. So if I played 15 years of pro ball, there's probably 2 or 3 a year, like full on fist fights that happen in a locker room. A lot of time it's after a game. It's right before the media is allowed in the locker room. Like a guy bleeding. Oh, it's from the game. No, actually, I just got punched in the face. But there's but things. I mean, that's the nature of the game, right? It's can be very emotional. Can be people get hot tempered, and it's there's a lot of stuff that goes on in the locker room that people aren't aware of. So,
Mike Kelly, some
people love him, and some people think that he's
a bit like Reinbold or Joe Mack. It's either people don't have middling opinions of him. It's either he's a great guy or he's not.
So some people think Mike Kelly's a great guy personally, and he was just a bad coach, head coach.
Yeah,
he was part of the dynasty back in the day with Mike Riley.
Yeah, well, he
was the assistant coach.
Do you remember that he was? Wasn't he the QB's coach when Matt Dunnigan threw those 500
I believe
yards?
so.
Or how much? It's something like 700, 500 yards?
He has the record for most professional football passing yards in one game.
There's that one receiver that got like 400 of them, like the Thompson or whatever.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But just recently, now it's been a few weeks since this happened, but what's his name for the Bombers? Ontario Wilson?
Yes.
Just had a huge
201
game.
yards.
Which is a huge game in passing, considering the Bombers had 201 yards in their first 6 games.
Yeah. Well, in the CFL, you can get some of these American players who are very
come
good.
out of nowhere.
They come out of nowhere because, they can play.
Yeah.
And
so it might be a bright spot for them.
He's from Ontario.
It's been
his name's Ontario because he's from Ontario.
It's Ontario.
Ontario.
Yeah.
I was saying Ontario. Here's Houston.
Ontario.
Wilson. Sorry.
Wilson. Yeah.
His
nickname is Pokey. Do you know why his nickname's Pokey?
Because he loved Pokey Reddick.
No. He kind of looks like Pokey Reddick though, but I wonder if he knows that. His grandma told him he looked like a Pokemon.
Oh.
So they always called him Pokey.
That's not something your grandma would say to somebody, I wouldn't think. Hey,
The Bombers posted on their Instagram and like they put the picture of the Pokemon that he looked like, and I'm like, that's not flattering at all. But I thought it was funny.
thanks, Grandma.
Grandmas
Gma.
are the best.
Gma.
What's your next topic there, Timmy?
So when we went to the game, and we talked about this earlier in the best of episodes or our favorite episodes, when we went to the game in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
And the game was, we lost. Jays lost.
Yeah.
But it was pretty funny at the end. Well, first of all, Guerrero got caught off a second. We weren't happy about that.
Yeah.
But Duran came in, roll the clip.
Third out. Do or die here for the Toronto Blue Jays.
The last 3 outs they've got.
And Duran.
Here comes Duran.
It's the music of the Undertaker or Duran. We're not sure.
Back to you, Tim.
Back to you as well with Craig.
Breaking news, Duran
Has some bad shawarma, apparently, is what I've heard on the internet. And they're looking at his right stomach to see if he can perform in the bottom of the ninth against the Blue Jays.
He's right now under a lot of attention.
Top of the ninth. But there's a crowd of people around him to see if his tummy is okay and if he indeed can pitch. Back to you, Greg.
We'll see. This could be the turning point.
Who's your bloody? Who's your bloody? I'm not sure the Jays can get any runs in running scoring position anyway, even if I was pitching. But hey, this is something.
Something.
And then Duran had issues, and it turned out he had like a hangnail or some issue.
Yeah,
like some issue.
We thought he was coming out.
And I said in the clip, and I think, did we play it? He was coming out. He thought he was coming out of the game because he had bad shawarma, which, by the way, also was why I thought Mark Scheifele came out of the hockey game in Ottawa. Remember that?
Yeah, during our initial run with the Greg and Tim show.
So that's my go-to if someone is injured.
Bad shawarma.
Bad shawarma.
Which leads me to good shawarma.
Good shawarma.
Abi Khan's
Shawarma
Khan.
Yeah.
We talked to Abi just our last interview was with Abi Khan, and we talked to him about a lot of fun stuff. Some about his restaurant, Ramadan, whether or not he's going to run for premier, a great Doug Brown story. So if you haven't got a chance to check it out yet, check out our interview with Abi Khan.
And he said anybody at all that wants to join him on a day of fasting,
he will feed.
He will, if you do that with him.
I think he thinks there's only 12 people that watch the show, and that one will take.
If you are interested in joining Abi Khan,
there's a sign up
day
below.
Of fastings. If you just go below,
go to the gregandtimshow.ca.
That's right. That's another thing too. Yeah, we have a new website.
We have a website up now.
It replaces the old website that did not exist.
That's right. On that website, we have blogs. From our shows. We have some of our shows. We have the complete library of the Greg and Tim Show from
everything
the podcast.
In one place, like one place shopping.
It's
like the Walmart of websites.
We are the Buc-ee's of websites.
Yeah. Oh, Buc-ee's.
Buc-ee's of websites.
Buc-ee's.
Hey, I want to get into a segment that we did with Jasmin Laine.
Yeah.
We're going to get a little bit darker here for a second. We talked. We talked to Jasmin Laine, and Jasmin Laine opened up about a lot of things. And at the beginning of the episode, she goes, "This is weird." Like, she thought that the interview was weird, the structure was weird,
you were weird,
I was weird, everything was going weirdly. But then we got into a whole bunch of topics, and one of the topics that I thought was a great topic and a great story, and Jasmin did a very, very good job of telling it, was when she started speaking about her grief and how she found God.
Right.
You know, I think that I've always been religious. I grew up with religion, and but I resented it in my youth, as a lot of people who grew up with it do. And then again, you're on a journey of some sort, and you end up finding that moment, that thing happens where finally it clicks and it makes sense. Yeah. And some people it may never happen, and that's too bad. But I'll keep praying for you, and I'll keep wishing you well. And treating you all the same as I would any other day.
Yeah.
But it truly wasn't until I lost my ex that was a really big one for me. And I remember whew, that was hell. Still is.
How long ago was that?
I think 8 or 9 months ago. Very recent. Still in my first year, which is why I still get teary eyed.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that.
It sucks ass, for lack of better words.
Want it to go through. Yeah.
It's hell. It's hell. But yeah, so like after I had lost him, I was really, really struggling with that. And I was already getting a little closer to finding God per se, I suppose. But some of the things that I experienced and some of the things that like were validated at that point in time, wow.
Yeah.
Like to me, that was really the end all be all at that point. Like I knew 100,000%. Like, oh no, this is real.
Yeah.
And there have even been a few moments since then, like experiences that I've had and validations that I've had where like I've sat in my car crying and like something will happen that like I couldn't make it up if I wanted to.
Yeah. And
I'll just sit in my car crying and I'll say like, I don't even know how on earth can I be sad when like I know that you're okay.
Yeah.
And I know that there's not a lot in the Bible to prove that. There's a handful of stories, but I've spoken with quite a few like pastors and stuff with it. Again, I love researching.
Yeah.
And I've really come to the conclusion that somebody who is really lost and has kind of been taken over by evil forces, so to speak, I have a really hard time believing that they wouldn't be welcomed with open arms, you know?
Yeah.
Like you're a good person, you lived a good life, and you tried everything you could, but something took over, you know? And it was something that we couldn't take back. But I have a really hard time believing that, you know. And again, like truly, it's like I feel like I know it to be true. I'm like, I know this sucks right now.
Yeah.
Whatever lesson I have to learn from this sucks.
Yeah.
But I'm powering through. Thank you for helping to guide me. And like I know that I'll see you again.
Yeah. Yeah. Drew Dudley in our last interview that we just I actually just finished editing it, so it's fresh in my mind right now. He was talking about a box. And grief is like having a bouncy ball in a box. And he said that there's a button on the box. And every time you shake that box, the ball hits the button, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the ball starts out the size of the box. So every little thing gets you. And then the ball slowly gets smaller, right? So...
I like that.
Yeah, he does. Watch the episode when it comes out on Friday.
Okay.
No plug or anything like that. But he explains it way better, and he has a description for grief, and I cannot for the life of me remember what it is right now. And we talk about grief a little bit on that one, and it's tough. Like grief is tough, but when you have faith, grief gets easier.
I think even too, it's just like that added. I don't know, like that added thing in the back of your mind where it's like okay, no, we're good.
Yeah,
this is hell, this sucks, but I have faith that everything will make sense at some point in time, you know. I actually I recently there's a man by the name of Stephen Gray. He's the director of a movie called After Death. Came out from Angel Studios. He lives like literally 6 minutes away from me, and he's been touring all over the place lately for his film. It's the highest grossing documentary film since 2016. Fun fact.
Oh, wow.
Nicely written and directed by a Manitoban.
Where can we find it? Do you know?
I'm actually not too sure. I joked with him that I illegally streamed it, but it wasn't a joke.
Because that's the only place you can find it.
Angel Studios is a tough one. They get blocked a lot.
Oh man, that one with Jim Caviezel in it.
Yes,
was literally crowdfunded.
The Sound of Freedom. You know what's crazy? That whole movie took place in like a village in Cartagena, Colombia. I went to Colombia, Cartagena about 2 weeks after I watched it, and I remember looking over on our balcony. I have photos of it of the shipping port that they filmed in that movie with the children inside of it, and I remember looking over at it and thinking like, oh my god,
there could be
there probably is on average. I think there's usually quite a few found every month, and I was like, this is crazy.
That was an unreal film.
After Death is really cool. I've watched it twice now. It's really incredible, and him and I too. He has also dealt with some pretty brutal losses in life. And that's the thing. There's so many people that will be like the go-to, oh, well, how on earth could I have faith? Why would, if God was so good, why would he take this innocent person? Why would he do this? Yeah. And it's like, yeah, but like maybe that person's role did what it had to do. And they're just kind of moving on to that next chapter and they're not gone. You know, I had this really insane dream shortly after the loss I was dealing with. It was the most real dream I've ever experienced in my life. I've met with a lot of people. I was actually talking to Stephen Gray about this as well. It's really common. And the way that it's described is like identical from person to person. It's very bizarre. Okay. Like it'll give you chills. If you ever unfortunately experience something like this and talk to somebody else who has, it's insane.
You get the same.
It's insane. And there's people that I've talked to since where I've just told them the story and they'll be like, oh my God. And they're like not even people of faith.
Yeah.
But they're like, I had that and I remember that. But I had this dream shortly after. It was within the days that I got the news. And it was so crazy. It was the most real dream I've ever had in my life. Like it was a memory. I remember it clear as day. Like it happened to me before I came here. I remember the feeling of the air. It was warm. I remember how it smelt.
Oh, wow.
Like I remember everything, like every tiny detail. I don't even remember what the hell I had for breakfast as good as I remember this dream.
Yeah.
But in it, there was somebody in my dream that was talking to me. And the one thing that I kept saying was, I'm just so sad and I miss him and I love him. And I just want to tell him that life's been really hard without him. And there was somebody in my dream that, they had like pointed out the window. I don't know who it was that I was speaking with, but it was somebody who was comfortable and familiar. And they had pointed out the window and I saw my grandmother who passed away about 13 years ago, 15 years, I guess now. And it was a younger version of my grandmother, maybe in her 30s or so, which is another thing, if you look into it, very common when it comes to weird little things like that people say are kind of like religious experiences, encounters of some sort, a visit of some sort. Is a younger version of my grandma. Obviously, I wasn't alive when she was that age. And I went out to my grandma and I couldn't even remember what my grandma sounded like. She passed away when I was so young. And it had been so many years and we didn't have video footage back then. So I don't remember what my grandma sounds like, but I walked up to her and I said like, Grandma, like, I'm just so sad. And I remember I was holding my cell phone and I was trying to text him and none of the messages were going in. And I was like, I just kept saying like, I don't know what to do. Like, I feel like he blocked me or something. Like he's gone. I can't contact him and I want to so bad. And I just want to tell him that I really miss him and life's been really hard without him. And I really love him. My grandma looked at me and in her voice, which again, I hadn't heard for years, she said, she grabbed my phone and she said, he's not gone. He didn't block you. He just has a new number. And she like put his new number in my phone. And that's something that I kind of like to say as like a way to summarize when people are really grieving.
Yeah.
And I understand that can be really tricky sometimes, especially if you're not somebody of faith. Like if you're one of those people who believes that like you just die and it's nothing.
Yeah.
Wow, does that ever sound depressing? But okay. If you have reasons for believing that, I'm not here to judge you. But I surely hope you feel as though your life is more valuable than that. And if not, please reach out.
Yeah.
But it's something that I often say is like, you know, it's hell and it's the worst pain imaginable and life is suffering and life is very hard and it's not fair and terrible things happen to good people all the time.
Yeah.
But like at the end of the day, good people, they're not gone, you know, and they didn't block you. They just have it. They just have a new number now. And you might not have access to it yet, but one day you will.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like something I try to remind myself of in terms.
And we didn't even know until like 3/4 through the episode how recently someone who was very
close to her
had passed away.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking to myself, oh my gosh, like for her to be speaking about it, like some people couldn't even talk about it because and it had not been that long. And she opened up her heart about that.
So shout out to Jasmin Laine. She's currently doing a new job.
Yeah.
I think it's called Creator Aid is what she's working with right now, a company called Creator Aid. And she's no longer on the radio, but you can still find her on social media and everywhere else right now because she is everywhere. And she has her own channel. We'll link below as well.
Yeah. And as soon as we were done taping, and it was a great episode. We were there for a while, and then she stayed here, and I left. But
We talked about so much stuff
and
after
there
you
was
left.
like part 2, non-recorded,
Non-recorded.
and we'll talk about that never.
Maybe we'll get her back on for part 2 and record
Do you
those
think
conversations.
she'd talk about what you talked about afterward?
Probably.
Oh yeah.
I think now she would.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So
and also to talking about her, she touched on the moon landing, and that's another topic. I'll segue a little bit. And what she said was, and we talked about this, was the moon landing fake?
yeah.
And which another one of my favorite topics to talk about. I love it so much. But her opinion was it was faked at the time, but they actually did go to the moon.
So what I'm going to play is a segment from the conversation of the moon landing,
Right.
where you
Yeah.
give your rant.
Okay.
Go.
To imply that we have not been to the moon, you are not just saying NASA is lying. You aren't just saying there's a single conspiracy within one company. You're actually implying there's a conspiracy involving the world's 71 space agencies, 13 of which have launch capabilities. Not only are you saying all 71 of these agencies are lying, but every person within those organizations are lying, or they're just being fooled. Furthermore, if this is true, then every single astrophysicist in the world is a scam artist getting paid to do research through telescopes and instruments that would be useless. So roughly 75,000 people are lying about what they do for a living and getting paid for it. Not only is it absurd to even imply that the NASA program under the United States government could possibly pull this sort of conspiracy off, but the fact that all 71 space agencies around the world are also taking part in some conspiracy, and every astrophysicist and every astronaut is also part of that same cover-up. It just seems like so many different people are involved in this major conspiracy. I personally have an easier time believing we actually went to the moon rather than that scenario I just read out loud.
Yeah, and I've read that. I know you don't want me to say anything else, but I got lots of answers to what you just said. Maybe for another show.
We might have to leave it for another show. And at the end of that conversation, you could feel that our guest, Chuck, was deflated.
Right.
And that you had just punctured his balloon and made him sad and lonely. No, you didn't do that. But I think he felt like you were super prepared.
Right.
And he didn't. Kind of like our Die Hard conversation that we talked about during the first best of here.
Yeah.
He wasn't as prepared as you, and you did a lot of research
I
to prepare that
Chuck did a
document.
great job of bringing up points. He's very knowledgeable about it. And sometimes it's not about being right or wrong. Like, can you prove all this stuff? Not really.
No.
The idea that this is...
You can't prove it. He can't prove it.
No. So you're left with your opinions. But I thought he did a great job.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated him on the episode, or again, Pepisode, whichever one you want to talk about.
Yep.
Is it Peppa Pig? Is Peppa Pig a character? I work at these group homes, and these little kids are
Peppa
watching
Pig
Peppa
is
Pig
a character. Yeah.
in a show. Yeah, Peppa Pig.
Yep.
Anyway, I have PTSD from watching these shows with little kids. So what I wanted to talk about next is the idea of FOMO versus what was the second thing?
JOMO.
JOMO, right. And FOMO is the fear of missing out. JOMO is the joy of missing out. And it was one of the first topics that we discussed with just the two of us. And it was from a message that we had heard from our pastor, Zach Fontaine, who now has since come on the show and expounded on that. So I thought that was an interesting discussion.
Do you want to show the discussion we had, or do you want to show the discussion that Zach
Let's
had?
start with the discussion we had.
Okay.
So we're going to get into this segment that we kind of introduced at the beginning. And this is from Pastor Zach Fontaine, who is one of the pastors at our church.
Yeah.
He had done...
This kind of just came to us.
He's done a
this weekend.
series of messages recently. And the last one that was this past Sunday, he talked about a FOMO versus JOMO.
Yeah.
And FOMO was the fear of missing out.
Yeah.
So in essence, saying yes to too many things and running yourself ragged and really not really doing any of them quite well, versus the JOMO, which is the joy of
not Josh
out.
Morrissey.
Joy of missing out.
Yeah.
And he said actually he is a FOMO in that he's
a former FOMO.
Missing out, or he has been in the
A
past.
former FOMO.
And his wife has the joy of missing out. So
Yeah.
they are diametrically opposed.
Diametrically.
I've said
you're
that
using
twice now. So.
That's 2 big words in one day.
It's the same word. Said twice.
Said twice. So let's we'll check out a clip here and then we'll chat about it a little bit.
Roll it.
Roll it.
It is. It's a test every single time, but I've learned to come away from the FOMO side and enter into what she calls the JOMO side. You know what that means? You can probably put 2 and 2 together. The joy of missing out. Okay? It's the joy of missing out. Now, let me say something here, okay? We have this lifestyle where when you don't realize to understand what JOMO really can do for your life is when you can actually start to implement that pause that we talk about. We can actually start to implement proper priorities when you realize you actually have more joy when you miss out sometimes, okay? I'm not saying you miss out on everything, but prioritize what you think is the things you want in your life. And apart from that, just enjoy the ride of JOMO where you say, sorry, I can't make that. And then you're sitting at home enjoying what you prioritized in your life because it's better because you have peace.
So that's what the clip's all about there, Tim. So I think it leads me to a question and probably leads you to the same question.
Yeah, what's that question, Mr. Greg?
What are you? Are you a FOMO or are you a JOMO?
I'm definitely not a FOMO.
I disagree.
I do not have the fear of missing out. For this is my explanation too.
Yeah. I think it actually is more deep than just FOMO versus JOMO.
So asking yourself the question, how many times do you say no?
Yeah.
If it's I rarely say no, you're FOMO. And if it's you often say no, you are, and of course this is a balance, but if you often say no, and sometimes it's for the right reason, sometimes it's for the wrong reason, there's lots of reasons why we say no.
Yeah.
But assuming, your time is finite.
So that reminds me of the movie Yes Man.
Yeah.
Remember that movie with
Jim
Carrey? And he's saying yes to everything.
Zooey Deschanel.
Yeah, Zooey Deschanel. And he's saying yes to everything, and he's like, he's the RedBull scene where he's like super like whipped up on RedBull. Red Bull, Red Bull, Red Bull, Red Bull.
I think I'd really.
Anyway, that's saying yes to everything.
So
he was on Red Bull.
You can get deeper into this question.
Yeah.
Like I say, there's many reasons people say no, and there's many reasons why they say yes. The term that you have to focus on is the fear of missing out.
Yeah.
I don't fear missing things out. I think I say no to. I feel bad sometimes that I'm saying no.
So
if you say, hey Tim, can you come out tonight?
So let me change it up then.
Yeah.
Let me change.
That's the question.
No, well, it is the question, but I think that you do have FOMO.
Okay, explain.
But you have selective FOMO.
But that goes against.
No, because you went to the Grey Cup with me for a reason.
I wanted to go to the Grey Cup, and it was cheap.
You went to the Grey Cup with me for a reason, though, and the reason was more so because you didn't want to miss the Bombers winning the Grey Cup.
In 29 years, yeah.
Yeah.
How many times have I said no to going to the Grey Cup since then? Twice. Why?
Once.
I think we had talked about it first.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about that.
And you went last year, and
I went last year.
I didn't even blink twice about not going. I didn't want to go.
Yeah.
And I didn't go.
You didn't have the fear of missing out on that, but I think there's certain things that you have a selective fear of missing out on. So it's not that you're like you have FOMO all the time, but I do think that if there's something going on, that you sometimes have that fear.
I think you've described 99.9%
well, that's
of
what
the
I
population
mean.
by
Yeah.
that. So
I personally don't think I have FOMO.
I think we all make decisions based on those kinds of things that if we really want to do them, we'll do them. The issue is what percentage of those. Are you always saying yes because just for the sake of saying yes?
Yeah.
Because you don't want to let somebody down. You don't want to miss something. I mean, that's why little kids, they want to stay up late even though they're exhausted because they might miss something.
Yeah.
Right?
That's a different kind of, yeah.
Even though those things are irrelevant and oftentimes boring.
I think what happens is you kind of grow out of FOMO.
Right.
Like you do things to the point where you're like, now like I'm okay with missing things.
Yes.
You know, when you're younger, you can ask like, you could probably ask my son Brandon, you know, I've got tickets to the hockey game. Do you want to go? He'd be like, yes. You know, I got tickets to the football game. Yes. I got tickets to Shania Twain. Yes. Like, I could say I have tickets to this band that really stinks, and he'll say yes.
Yeah.
But I think it's because he's at an age right now that he hasn't experienced everything, and he wants to experience things. So I think that's where the FOMO comes in. But people that have true JOMO are people that are like more introverts to the point where they don't need to do anything.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Now you're going to the motivation of why people say no, and that's a deeper question.
Yeah.
Right. Some people will say, I just can't do everything, so I'm going to prioritize, like was said in the clip, because this is more important. I'm going to do this and not this, because they recognize they can't. Then you're talking about someone who's very introverted that will say no because they don't want to feel embarrassed. They think the situation is going to be something they wouldn't be comfortable with.
Yeah.
They might not want to be hurt in a relationship, things like that. So you're talking about a deeper question.
So do you think that I have FOMO?
100%. I joke about this all the time. I say Greg can't say no to anything except when I'm asking him for things. But he can say no to me.
It's actually kind of funny. So it's one of the reasons why, like, when I heard this message on Sunday, I was like, I want to have this conversation with Tim because I know that Tim used to ask me to do things just to make me say yes.
Yeah.
And I'm a really bad no person.
Yeah, you're a terrible no person.
I say yes to almost everything, and you pointed that out to me, and that's when I stopped saying yes to you.
Right, just selective. Again, selective here. he'll help move a dead body for someone else, but for me, he's not going to Sosmos.
I'll paint houses for Matthew, but for Tim, I will let him do his own painting.
Right. Are we talking about real painting or?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I thought that's the other thing.
Okay, and now let's show the discussion when Zach joined us.
Yeah.
Tim will do this thing where he goes, and we got a video clip of that.
Yeah.
And now I got to look up the video.
He has to edit everything.
I got to look up the video clip. I got to like find it somewhere.
And he has to because I just said it.
Yeah. And I got to edit. Now I got to find this baby moon thing. I think it's actually right behind.
Or you can just say no.
No, Greg doesn't.
So that's one of my things is it's very hard for me to say no to things.
So, and that's a good transition.
Why?
Because
okay.
The inability or ability to say no, we kind of talked about that. You talked about that, about FOMO versus JOMO.
Which, by the way, if you ever want to go to the mall and give me the same challenge you gave your wife to talk to any stranger and you'll buy me anything you want, I will do it in a heartbeat. And I'll do it multiple times.
Don't do that. Just don't.
And act like you know them and they're the long lost friend.
I would do that.
Just don't do that. Do that to me because I'll be completely embarrassed. But to him,
I wouldn't like to do that either. I would do it, but I don't know if I'd like. Yeah.
You don't know if you'd like to do it?
No, if one thing I've learned from Jess is which is my wife, you can't buy her.
Right.
Cannot.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had the typical guy questions to her where I'm like, okay, $1 billion, okay, cash on your front step.
Yeah.
If you just simply do this. No.
So her
I'm like,
love
what?
language is not gifts.
No, it is gifts.
Yeah.
But to her, it's just one of her. She has a 3-way tie. It's unbelievable.
Of course.
Yes. and so for her, she always, I'm like, well, what's there to lose? She's like, my dignity. I'm like, okay, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, like,
come
she goes
on.
that way with it. And I'm like, So she's taught me the sense of also thinking like, okay, I don't know if there's certain things I just wouldn't do. Right. Whereas back in the day before I met her, I'd probably, if you said $100 million or something like that, I'd be like, sure.
Yeah.
that's a hypothetical. If there was actually $100 million there, we would all do absolutely everything, and that includes moving a dead body,
painting houses,
and then moving the dead body.
Anyway, well, even on our guys trip, like I would probably talk to more people than most people would too, and it's just as he's gonna ask is you're gonna talk about FOMO and JOMO.
Yeah.
Right. So like the fear of missing out and the joy of missing out are your two topics from. We actually talked about that probably like 20 episodes ago.
That was like a year ago, I think. My message, maybe.
It would have been like October, November of last year. Yeah.
Okay.
And the main thing is being an extrovert. Do you tie that into being FOMO?
Extroverted people, I would say, almost always tie that into FOMO. Almost. Whereas for me, I have a wife that is, and obviously in that message it says that, a JOMO type of wife, right?
Yeah.
So she's taught me that. aspect for sure. There's times where I'm just like, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to just be at home and just like, I don't need to go out. Right. Like, so that aspect of JOMO is definitely there, but I'd say inherently, I'm definitely like the characteristics of Zach's personality is definitely, it's definitely FOMO, like almost, but I find the busier you get in your life, the more you kind of lean towards JOMO though at the same time, right? You kind of learn what your personality is and you get those times. Like I'm an extroverted person, so I am people charged if I go hang out, but I'm not people charged on like not forced interactions, but interactions that have to do with work.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily charge me up. I could finish an entire day of socializing.
Yeah.
And I'll say, Jess, what do you want to do tonight? And she'll be like, what do you mean? What do you want to do tonight? Like, we've been both super busy and just like chatting with everyone. I'm like, I know. And it was great. But that doesn't fill my reservoir of socializing. It just fills a different reservoir, right?
It's work.
Totally. It's different. Whereas she's like, I'm good to go home. Right. Like,
well, and that's what the definition. I don't know if you would agree with that, but we had a guest on a number of weeks ago saying the definition of an extrovert is someone that gains energy by being with people.
Mm-hmm.
And the introvert is someone who loses energy the more they and the interesting
but
thing
also
is
gains energy by recharging on their own.
Right. So and we kind of came up to the idea that Greg is naturally an introvert in that he loses energy.
Right. Yeah.
I would say that
when he interacts with people. However, he's taught himself principles of being extroverted so that he will appear to be an extrovert on the surface. But behind the scenes, he will, after a weekend with the family, will just need 12 hours of sleep. And
after camp week,
it's
like exhausting.
Totally, it is. Well, this is every single day, right?
And it's nonstop and no sleep.
Whereas for me, I'm the opposite, where I actually gain energy when I talk to people, but I've learned introverted tendencies in that I just have habits of wanting to be by myself and avoiding people.
Yep.
Not all the time, but I get in those traps, right?
Totally.
So would you agree with kind of those definitions and where do
you Yeah. I think the part that people don't usually talk about is that an extrovert still has a social battery. It just takes a lot longer to drain, right? Like there is a time where I'm like, okay, right? Like just depends on what your work is too, right? Like for me, it's like I typically am the person that is going to keep the conversation going. I'm typically the person that wants to make sure I am doing my best to value those that I'm talking to. So when you go through there, you have a little bit, you're exerting a ton of energy.
Yeah.
My social battery is fine unless it's always about work. Then I'll get drained real quick, right? But if it's just chill and there's no expectation, I guess, behind it, then I can find that to be the case. But my social battery can get drained. It just takes a lot longer for mine to get drained than it does Jessica's, right?
So when Zach rejoined us, did it change any of your perception of FOMO and JOMO?
I am 100, and we disagree on this because you think I'm a mixture.
I think you're a mixture for sure.
I will often, I have no issues missing out on things.
Yeah.
None. Like, and I love my sleep. And if the guys are going out and I think it's too late and I have to get up in the morning, I have no issues saying. Now what I do feel bad about is if all of a sudden I haven't hung out with the guys for a little bit. Because I keep saying no, so I'll be like, I should say yes the next time. But those individual times,
oh
no,
you don't have FOMO.
I have my sleep. You know how much I love my sleep and I love my breakfast.
Yeah, I was surprised. This will be a couple weeks after this or before this shows, but you came out to an event at night.
You can't say no all the time.
You can't. You're right.
Like you have friends, you have buddies. You can't say no all the time.
If you do, you don't get invited.
Yeah.
Right.
So no, I there's importance in interacting with community for sure.
Okay, so I've got the next one that I've got is when we spoke to Aly Raposo.
Okay.
Aly Raposo was a guest of ours. She's the second half of the Get It Together podcast with Jasmin Laine.
Yep.
The interview that we did with her, we got into a few different things. We got into some mental health stuff. We got into some challenges and some stuff that she's doing. The one discussion that I really liked and that went really well when we shared it was the anxiety question.
Right. So let's roll it.
Okay. So I found this video and I think it's very interesting, and I wanted to kind of get your perspective on it because you deal with mental health, you deal with anxiety, you deal with counseling.
Yep.
So it's the top left video there, Tim. If you can just turn it to Aly and get her to check it out.
There was a study that I found pretty exciting. They said the part of your brain that you get anxiety from is the same part of your brain that has gratitude. You can't be grateful and anxious at the same time. So then in the Bible where it goes, instead of being anxious, be grateful.
It's so,
this
when
is
you
so
told me that,
crazy to think that they were calling out legitimate things that scientists have found out about.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Did you show Jasmin that video
I
or those
haven't.
people? Because she just sent me a clip from them or from that guy like a
Okay.
couple days ago, and it was talking about like how we spend time worrying and essentially how that can go into like worshiping the devil rather than worshiping God, and so worrying is like a product of that. So it's the same dude, which is really interesting. I've never
His
seen.
name is George Janko.
Yeah, I've never seen him before that.
He used to be like the third person on the Impulsive podcast with one of the Paul brothers. I think it's Logan Paul. And then he actually because he was outspoken about his faith, the host, I think it's Logan Paul, would make fun of him to the point where he actually quit the show and he actually started his own show.
Well, good for him.
Which is this one. But the reason why I wanted to bring this up though is because like I think that a lot of this comes to the thought of, I'm anxious. But people forget to go, I'm thankful.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So what are your thoughts on something like that where...
I think that's so true. I was just talking to my girlfriend today where she was like having a panic attack and texting me about it. And I was like, well, what are you doing right now? Like while you're texting me, like, where are you? Like, let's talk about that for a second. She's like, well, I'm in bed. I'm like, oh, you don't have like a busy day today? Like, no. I'm like, well, that's awesome. Like, it's like it's like kind of just stopping right then and there. And I also think too, like with anxiety, it's like a snowball. It's like a snowball effect, right? Like if you feed it and it'll just get bigger and eventually it's like growing and growing and growing. And I've been there. I have generalized anxiety disorder. So it's totally under wraps now. But when I was young, it was like out of control. So I get that it's difficult for people to, especially if you have a diagnosis or whatever, I think it's difficult for people to have that stall, that buffer before it goes into the snowball effect, because if that's ultimately what it is, like, and I was just telling my girlfriend about it and saying, stop it right in its tracks, and, pay homage to the fact that you're doing that, because that's an act of self-care to be able to go, okay, stop it right there. Don't let it grow. Don't let it change into anything more, and go like, it's hard to do, but I'm also really proud of myself for just doing what I just did. You know what I mean? Like, it's such a big thing. And I think for me too, and just as humans, we become overwhelmed and we get in the motion of Monday to Friday and all of our responsibilities, and you feel it. But I think for me, when I start to feel that, I make a very big conscious effort to stop and look at all of the most amazing things. Like I'll find 5 things that I'm grateful for. When I'm feeling really overwhelmed or worried about something that, is coming up, or like a deadline, or like I have a huge workload, I just stop. I'll go outside and like take a deep breath of the fresh air. And like, that was an amazing, even just breath of fresh air, like just to be outside and be grateful for that.
Yeah.
So like, I find 5 things, like, in like my partner, the food in my fridge, this a job that I have, like I find that gratitude, and I find that that in itself slowly will chip away at the anxiety that I have.
I heard a stat that said something like of the things that go through your brain on average every day, 74% or something like that were negative. And of those 74% things that you think, 90% is cyclical, or 95%. It means they're not a new thought. It's just something that goes on and you repeat worrying about the same thing. So I guess what you're saying is learning the strategies to overcome some of those things, just to reset your brain. Do you find that anxiety is something that is more intrinsically female? I'm not generalizing anything, because of course there are some men in category and some women that aren't, but to a point, do women typically deal with more anxiety in your opinion?
I would say so. Although I find that changing in the last few years. And maybe that's just a product of, I don't know, a million things. It could be also like inflation. There's like so
Yeah.
many things going on where people have to worry about more things. But I think just, it goes without saying that women maybe think about things on a different level than men do, right? Like really get into it, pull things apart. And I know that there are men that do behave and think that way,
Yeah.
but I would say more overwhelmingly it would be women, right? And so like in the last, I don't know, few years, I've met a few of my friends or colleagues that are men that have really been talking about anxiety and that they've been struggling with it. And I think it's a really heavy thing that we got going on in our world right now with, all the stuff you have to keep up with. And like I said, the economy and inflation and
Yeah.
providing and all the things that come with being a man and expectations that you're supposed to meet too. I think that they are building even more so than they ever have before. Like I think before it was always just kind of status quo, but men need to now be strong and soft and all these
Yeah.
things. So
So, people came back to that and they kind of argued the point. They don't really understand the point
Right.
that George Janko was making in the comment, and they didn't really agree with it. And some people really agreed with it. But in the end, these kinds of things are very polarizing.
Yeah.
Especially if you do deal with anxiety and depression. Like you're going to be a little bit more invested in it, right?
Yeah, I anxiety and depression. It seems like this is my opinion now, obviously, but 20 years ago, people didn't talk about their depression. They kind of went day by day and brushed it aside.
Yeah.
20, 30, whatever, how many years ago it is. And then we started the let's talk about it campaigns, right?
Yeah.
Talk about it, get it out there. And that's been valuable. Like we should talk about
100%.
things because like anything else, why should you keep it inside? It doesn't matter what it is. It could be anxiety. It could be your feelings about X, Y, Z, anything, right?
Yeah.
You need to be able to share that with trusted confidants, with your friends, with your family, with your peers, right?
Yeah.
And I think personally, it can go a little too far in one direction.
Yeah.
We talk about the two ditches where everybody has their anxiety.
Mhm.
Everybody has their depression, and some people can tend to associate with those things and make it stay in those places in
Yeah.
their anxiety because that's where they're comfortable. And some people have victim mentalities, and they're not talking about it to get through it per se, but to wallow inside of it, and that's their excuse. Like, don't
Yeah.
tell me what to do. I'm comfortable in this big blanket in my couch, eating nachos and watching TV. So I do think there's a balance in there,
Yeah.
right? And some people have real, and I've said this before, real issues, like with their chemical imbalances, things that they actually need to talk to a doctor, whether it's a psychologist,
Yeah.
whether that's an actual doctor, as far as looking at things in their brains and how that works. But again, it's a two-sided coin.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's the end of this episode. That's the third installment. We've got one more coming up next week. If you're getting bored of these, I'm sorry, but I think that we're sharing the best stuff that we've talked about, and it just gives you a glimpse of what we talk about on a regular basis, whether it's just me and Tim talking or whether it's us talking with the guests. We got a lot of great guests that are going to still continue to come on the show. We've got some people lined up that we're going to be working on for season 2 here, but we've got one more episode of the best of coming up, and after that, we're going to be back. We're going to be back.
Remember, you might only find one or two of these best of interesting, but if you do find a couple of them interesting, go back, watch that episode,
Watch the full
whole thing.
episode.
So if you like Drew Dudley's episode, you think what we're talking about is interesting, go back and watch Drew Dudley.
It's always going to be linked above Tim's head
or Adam
during the
Bighill, or Dan
episodes.
Chenier, or anybody. If you want to see me in the snow,
You want to see Tim
Dan
shirtless in the
Chenier,
snow.
episode 29, go right to the end. It's right at the end.
Yeah. And just remember that when you go and watch them, comment.
Yeah.
Hit the comment button. Get the comments going. The more you comment, the more people will see it. The more people see it, the more we can get
You wanna
some
talk
great
about
guests.
Shazam? If you still want to talk about Shazam, at least send us the tape, please.
Without the anthrax.
Just send. I want to see it.
Yeah. Okay.
If you think it's real,
I want to see it too.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll see you next week for the last installment of the Best of Greg and Tim show.
episodes.
Thanks for watching the Greg and Tim Show podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with all your friends. Sharing is caring.